From renewables to shale and back again, an economic fairy tale in 3 parts. Wall Street, 2008. 8.6 million jobs lost due to the global financial crisis. Out of this economic darkness, a narrative arose. 250 miles southeast in Washington, D.C., a new presidential administration promised a great leap forward that was good for growth and good for the planet. They promised $150 billion would create 5 million green jobs for the American economy. The promise of renewable energy would transform the economy and save the environment while generating enormous profits for the companies involved. Old dirty energy was pushed aside in favor of the green, environmentally friendly power of solar panels, wind turbines, and hydrogen fuel cells. There was only one problem. The profits never came. The green bull was rising, and advocates for renewables promised ever cheaper energy from wind and solar. But their claims proved to be unrealistic. When everybody competes to do something quickly, costs inevitably rise, and projects run over budget. Despite this, investors continued to flood the renewable sector with cash. As a result, from 2008 to 2016, solar installations grew an impressive 30-fold, and wind turbines grew 5-fold. But while the green energy output increased, so did company losses. The markets predicted the growth of green energy correctly, but completely missed the profitability. Over that same time frame, old world oil stocks outperformed new world renewable stocks by a wide margin. And years of falling green stock prices led investors to embrace a different narrative. As we entered 2014, the green bull was drifting off to sleep, while the American energy renaissance right in our own backyard had taken its place. Oil and gas were no longer evil but good, as this time it was our oil and gas. Investors rushed to embrace shale in hopes of displacing foreign oil and bringing manufacturing jobs back to America. Billions of dollars streamed into this new market. Massive infrastructure, processing plants, and pipeline toll roads were built, from the oil patch north to the Dakotas and east to Appalachia. Shale companies took a page from Silicon Valley. They moved fast and they broke things. The cost of leasing acreage skyrocketed and wells were drilled at a furious pace. These companies raised hundreds of billions of dollars from everyone from global institutions to retail investors, all with promises of profitability at $50, no, $40. How about $35 oil prices? But those paying attention to details noticed that the math didn't add up. As it turned out, companies quoting these costs weren't including real-world expenses like processing the hydrocarbons and transporting them out of the fields to market, or corporate overhead, or even the interest expense on the debt used to finance the well in the first place. But that was not all. The most aggressive companies were claiming that there was so much oil in the ground, and their drilling technology was so precise that you could drill wells much closer together, which implied that every section of land contained much more recoverable oil, and thus gave them many more locations to drill. This gave the illusion of years and years of inventory, when in fact all it really meant was that the operator spent more money drilling more wells to produce the same amount of hydrocarbons, only faster. Think of it as putting more and more straws in the same milkshake. It doesn't create more milkshake. It just assures that the milkshake is consumed much faster. Costs went up, and the treadmill of replacing those reserves accelerated. Underneath the surface, the shale revolution was unraveling. Much like the original green bull, output was growing quickly, but profits and cash flow weren't. Investors began to lose faith in the narrative. And as the American energy revolution walked itself to the edge of the cliff, ESG, environmental, social, and governance initiatives gained steam, and the COVID demand collapse in early 2020 nudged it off the edge. Carbon-emitting shale businesses were now seen as uninvestable by many institutions. Oil and gas became a perma-short, and it was said that demand would never recover. Energy and materials, the sectors that power and build the global economy, fell from 13% of the S&P 500 index only 7 years before to less than 3%. Narratives were shifting once again, and the markets were returning to an old friend. The green bull was rising again, this time with a new incoming administration promising to drastically reduce carbon emissions. And since nobody cared about deficits anymore, there appeared to be no limit as to how much they could spend to do it. To get there, they would need to quickly shut down many coal and natural gas power plants and replace internal combustion cars with EVs. Politicians, knowing that this was a very popular topic with voters, started competing to promise it faster, regardless of the physical challenges. I'll do it by 2040. No, I can by 2030. How about 2025? The success of electric vehicle stocks and the swelling forces of decarbonization in ESG created a tsunami of capital to push this narrative forward. Thrilled investors once again channeled hundreds of billions of dollars towards technologies with infinite promise, typically zero profits, and in some cases, zero revenues. Investors were told that the costs of solar and wind would continue to decrease, and in fact, according to the popular and oft-cited levelized cost of energy analysis, they were, or would soon be, cheaper than fossil fuels and nuclear. Once again, those willing to look at the numbers understood these lofty claims were rather selective, just like those who insisted that shale could be produced for less than $40 a barrel. To start, the numbers disregarded the cost of backup power sources or storage. The sun does not always shine, and the wind does not always blow. And to prepare for that, you need excess capacity and costly storage. Investors then overlooked the transportation costs of green power. The best places to harvest renewables at scale are typically hot, dry, and windy climates. These climates are often quite far from population centers, leading to expensive and difficult to permit transportation. The best positioned locations are naturally the first to get developed, making subsequent growth increasingly challenging. Forecasts for renewables to soon be less expensive than hydrocarbons also assumed that the cost of solar panels and wind turbines themselves would always fall. However, the rapid increase in demand for copper, lithium, cobalt, and silicon components, all integral to renewable technologies, are causing materials prices to skyrocket. Models assumed solar panels and wind turbines would operate with little maintenance for 15 to 25 years, yet in the real world, the cost of keeping panels clean and replacing power cables for offshore wind kept rising, and the panels and blades themselves needed to be replaced more frequently. Just as investors eventually figured out the shale mirage, so too might the renewables bulls eventually understand the economic realities of green energy. To those willing to look, the truth is revealing itself, as places most aggressively turning to wind and solar are seeing energy costs rise faster than anywhere else in the world, while their grid reliability is falling. But innovation, the green bulls reply, theorizing that future technological leaps will make up for the current shortcomings. In doing so, they assume the physics of energy are governed by something akin to Moore's law, leading to exponential efficiency gains over time. But the physics of energy is a slave to very different laws, like the Shockley-Queisser and Betz limits. These show current levels of converting photons into electrons and capturing the kinetic energy from wind are rapidly approaching the point of significantly diminishing returns. To illustrate this, let's suppose the efficiency of a lithium-ion battery followed the exponential efficiency of Moore's law. In that case, after almost 50 years of development, a lithium-ion battery the size of a briefcase should be able to power a transcontinental jet flight. Instead, if done today, the required battery would be 8 times heavier than the plane itself. The points of all this are twofold. First, in the last 3 mini-manias in the energy world, the original renewables movement in 2007, the shale revolution in 2013, and the current renewables boom that kicked off in 2020 were all based on economic fairy tales. In each case, faulty economic assumptions were perpetrated by industry, supported and amplified by Wall Street, and widely embraced by an investing public. Second, and more importantly, the current stampede to rapidly replace fossil fuels with renewables, while well-intentioned, is leading us into a self-inflicted energy crisis. Recent extreme spikes in power prices in New England, California, Texas, across the European continent, all the way to Japan and Southeast Asia, are clear signs of formerly robust systems becoming unstable, which is a precursor to the potential for outright failure. The current trajectory of canceling the traditional energy economy before the green economy is robust enough to contribute a sufficient amount of reliable and affordable power is hurling us towards an increasingly perilous future. Not only will it inflict tremendous hardship on a huge part of the global population who already suffers from energy poverty, but given the promises being made, a colossal amount of taxpayer capital, which is our money, will be wasted, and whatever progress is made in the carbon reduction may well be offset by unnecessary inefficiencies. My home state of California is a perfect example, where the rapid, premature closure of natural gas and nuclear power plants has not only resulted in the most rapidly escalating energy costs in the country, but has also destabilized the grid, forcing the state to construct brand new temporary natural gas facilities to support the system when the wind and the sun are not cooperating. The Energiewende efforts in Germany and many other examples around the world tell similar stories. Renewables will absolutely play an important and growing role in our energy future, but the cost of focusing exclusively on them today, while canceling the industries that provide over 90% of our daily needs, risks catastrophic consequences. We can and must do better. We have to stop demonizing the existing global energy system, start an intelligent conversation about the role of nuclear and natural gas to help phase out coal power generation, and realistically plot a course for a cost-effective and efficient transition to a lower carbon energy future that is both environmentally responsible as well as supportive of a higher quality of human life, not just in the developed world, but all around the globe. I'm Robert Mullen from Marathon Resource Advisors. Thank you for your attention.